Welcome to episode number 5 of Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries. I don't know what the date was because I didn't say it in the original podcast, but I did say that Mike was feeling under the weather. I don't know why he was under the weather. I made some joke about him eating some egg salad sandwich. So here we go. Before I get into anything, let me tell you what this show is and what it is not. What this show is me and Mike discussing Unsolved Mysteries segments, how we remember them, and us commenting on it. What this show is not is basically an upload of the Unsolved Mysteries verbatim, like the audio from the show. So if you're just stumbling across this podcast, it's not Unsolved Mysteries, the show, just the audio. Okay, so, you know, because some people have already said, like, what's this, man? This isn't the, you know, this is a podcast of us two guys discussing the old segments. So if that's okay with you, you should really hang out and listen to what we have to say, because we're both huge fans. I felt like that was necessary to get out of the way.
Yeah. We've gotten some, criticism from some people that's just kind of, I don't really understand. That's, if you don't like the show, that's fine. But if you don't like it because it's not what you think it's going to be, I don't know. That's kind of a problem, because that's not what the show is. We're not like, we're just gonna, it's audio from the show. We get cease and desist orders probably from Cosgrove and Moyer.
Me and Mike are we're gonna reenact every single segment, for the audio, and we're gonna play the parts all the people. Yeah, no, that's not. Sorry, I don't know. It's audio. What were you expecting?
That would be terrible, but it would be kind of funny. But at the same time, it'd be terrible.
That would
trying to just.
Yeah, that would be god awful. But this is growing, though. The podcast is growing. We want to just genuinely thank everyone who's been listening and putting in the reviews on the iTunes.
Thanks.
Did a nice review. Who said it helps them on their commute to work. I love the stuff like that, because I listen to podcasts and I like listening to certain podcasts when I do certain things. So that's cool that we can do that for certain people.
Yeah, that's nice. That means we're doing something right.
Yeah, or we're just the only game in town that's talking about Unsolved Mysteries in podcast form. Either way, I'll take it.
So will I.
All right, so our first segment that we're going to be discussing is D.B. Cooper, the infamous case that many know, some may not know. The man who hijacked a plane and parachuted out of it, evading authorities, and still... apparently Mike has an update for us, but apparently still has not been caught. Some people think that he's a skyjacking mastermind, and others just think he's a basic career criminal. Well, after the end of this, you will make up your mind one way or the other, I'm sure. This man risked the lives of 42 innocent people for, I believe, $200,000, and many think he didn't even survive. So, this is what happens. Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. It's 2 p.m. A man dressed in all black raincoat, black tie, black hat, black sunglasses, walks into a Portland airport. Typical businessman, nothing distinctive about him, except for the fact that he's wearing all black.
That's kind of what stood out to me, is that he was just this, looked like a regular businessman. Nothing really stood out to him. He didn't choose to wear a mask or anything, just very inconspicuous. This looked like anybody you could see around the airport.
Of course, nowadays, with how airport security is and everything, everybody's suspect, I think, to a certain extent. This was obviously a much more innocent time.
Well, even me, I remember, they had to, because I didn't follow the directions immediately, because I was trying to remember what they were trying to tell me to do. So, I remember, it was the security check or whatever, and I guess, I didn't step into the booth the right way, so then that automatically meant, I was going to get searched or something. So it was so awkward. They're like, take your hat off, put your hands, it's like, put your hands up, and I thought, I put my hands up like I'm getting arrested. Because, I didn't know what they what they meant. They're like, put your hands over your head. So I'm like, I didn't do anything. I don't have anything on me. You know, sorry. I don't know what I did.
Yeah, authority always makes me nervous, probably because I don't like authority very much, and I don't really respond to authority very much. I never have, even all the way back in my high school and middle school and elementary school days. So anytime I come in contact with authority, I always get kind of nervous because I know that they have the potential to, like, put me in a room that I can't escape out of. And I've been to jail before, and it's not particularly fun, so I don't want to go back anytime soon. So this guy, DB Cooper, buys a plane ticket, a one-way ticket. The only name he gave was Cooper.
To Seattle.
Yeah, to Seattle. He inquired if the plane was a 727. This plane became notorious because it's the only airliner that a successful parachute jump can be made from the passenger cabin. So the only luggage he carried was his attaché case, which, for the layman out there, that's a briefcase, basically.
Yeah.
Florence Schaffner was the first crew member to talk to Cooper. He hands her a note, and he kept looking at her. You know, nowadays we would call that a creeper. Handing someone a
Some
note.
pervert, yeah.
Yeah. Handing someone a note and staring at them. I tried this at a Chili's, and it did not end up the same way this did. So
That's not how you pick up girls.
no, not at all. But it is how you hijack a plane, apparently, because after a while, he asked her, "Did you read the note?" So then at that point, she reads the note, and it says, "Miss, I have a bomb in my briefcase. I want you to sit beside me." Then at that point, he opens up the briefcase, and it's like this big-ass battery with 6 dynamite sticks attached to it. So it's the real deal. I mean, you don't want to fuck around.
It definitely looks legit.
Yeah. Florence informed the flight crew about Cooper. She said she saw the bomb. The flight crew then informed air traffic control, which then in turn contacted the FBI. His demands, of course, was $200,000 cash in small bills, which shows you this guy might not be that bright in one sense, because $200,000 cash in small bills. I mean, if I've learned anything from watching Unsolved Mysteries, from the robbery segments and all, cash is fucking heavy in large amounts.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't realize that, because not a lot of us have a lot of cash, unfortunately. But when you start getting like hundreds of thousands of dollars of bills, it's fucking heavy.
I mean, I saw one this recently. It was an armored truck sort of robbery where they broke in. I think it looked like an inside job, and they, got all the money out of the armored truck, but they had like multiple people there, and they had to literally, there was like probably like, it was like $11 million or something like that. So they took like 5 to 10 minutes just unloading all of these boxes of cash. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So it was a really heavy amount of money. So and they just eventually after a certain point they just left all the small bills in their getaway car, and then they just fled. So yeah, I mean, even the robbers are like, fuck the small bills. We don't have fucking time, and they're too heavy. So
I guess nowadays the hijacker would just request $200,000 in bitcoins to be transferred to his digital account.
Or why didn't he request it for $200,000 in hundreds? I mean, I don't know why he didn't ask for that. That wouldn't be as heavy.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Once you start going in denominations of $100 bills, that pile of money gets a lot smaller, because it's actually not that much. I've seen $100,000 in 100s before, and it's actually a tiny little pile. It's not nearly as large. So anyway.
So he also asked for 4 parachutes.
2 front pack and 2 backpack. Now, unbeknownst to him and the authorities, one of the parachutes was not going to open under any circumstance. They were afraid that he was wanting the parachutes because he was possibly going to take some hostages.
Yeah.
He demanded that the crew or the passengers not be notified about the situation. So he didn't want the passengers to be notified, probably because, as we saw during September 11th, when the crew, or when the passengers did know
about the plane that ultimately flew into that field in Pennsylvania, it's pretty much accepted at this point that the passengers rose up and bum rushed the hijackers and caused the plane to crash in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Might have been a similar situation here. So he didn't want the passengers knowing. Everybody just, waited by like normal, just thought it was a delay. In fact, DB Cooper ordered 2 bourbon and waters.
Yeah.
The FBI asked the airline what their approach to the hijacking was going to be. Did they want to pay the ransom? And this is something that I didn't know, but apparently that's an option that the victim has in one of these cases instead of the FBI. But, of course, the airline said, yes, we do wish to pay the ransom. And each one of those bills, the serial number was photographed, which, I mean, again, like, just the amount of time and effort that went into doing something like that is just crazy.
Yeah, these bills were carried on board by a flight attendant. They were $10,020 bills assembled in straps of 100 bills to a strap, and individual straps held together with rubber bands. The money alone, just the currency, weighed 21 pounds.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're talking about skydiving out of a plane, I mean, adding that much more weight on you it's got to throw you off in some way or another. The hijacker instructed that everyone stay or on the runway and not taxi up to the terminal. At 5:43, the plane landed at the Seattle airport, and they parked in a remote area of the runway. All the money and air and parachutes and all that was brought onto the airplane by one of the flight attendants. As I said, the 4 parachutes was delivered, but one was defective, and the passengers remained oblivious to everything going on.
I know, that's the thing. Like, everyone's just oblivious to everything. Like, they're interviewing some people who's like, I just thought it was just a normal delay.
Which,
And
honestly, I probably would too. I'm pretty oblivious to my surroundings.
I would be too. But at the same time, if it went a little bit longer, and didn't it go on longer than a normal sort of delay, and especially if did DB order the pilot to say, oh yeah, we have a little bit of a delay right now, waiting for fuel or waiting for some other plane to get out of the runway or something. If I never heard that over the loudspeaker, I would definitely, after a certain amount of time, get kind of freaked out and be like, okay, what is going on here? I haven't heard anything from the pilot. We're still here.
Well, I hate flying so much that, like, just to be back on the ground again, I wouldn't give a fuck what the excuse was. I'd just be glad to not be in the air anymore.
And then you find out later, oh, it was because there was some guy who hijacked the plane. They were like, oh.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm never flying again, so whatever state I'm in right now, I'm just making a new life here, because, yeah. So when the passengers got off the plane, then finally they were met by FBI agents, only to realize that their lives were in real mortal danger.
Yeah,
and
terrifying.
Funny enough, none of the passengers remember anything about the man with the briefcase. They because he was so inconspicuous. They couldn't tell the FBI any information. DB Cooper ordered the plane to take off with the back stairwell down. He argued back and forth with the pilot, and finally the pilot said, I don't care what you say, I'm not going to attempt to take off with the damn stairwell out, on the plane. So finally Cooper agreed, fine, for takeoff you can have the door closed, but then he was going to open it. Yeah. At 7:37 the flight p.m. the flight took off, and they were going directly into a storm on their flight path. DB Cooper told the stewardess to go to the cockpit and close the curtains. Now, I thought the actor that they had play DB Cooper was really good.
Yeah, he was.
He was very he very much expressed that angry, nervous, very in control kind of personality you would expect.
He oozed charisma and like coolness. He was just very calm and cool and collected, and there was some nervousness that he was having, but it didn't seem like he was like, this is out of his control, or this. It did kind of look like he was kind of something he did before. Like it was like, I kind of done something like this before, but at the same time, there are questions. They're like, well, why did he ask for $20 bills? You know, his denomination in $20 bills, or and stuff like that. But the way that they kind of portrayed the guy, he kind of reminded me of like a veteran. You know,
Yeah.
like this is not the first time he's done something like this.
So, at some point, as they're flying, the crew up in the cockpit noticed a light flashing that was indicating that the hijacker was attempting to operate the door back in the cabin. At 8:12, the flight crew said they were experiencing a rapid change in air pressure compared to like an ear popping sensation.
And I always hate that when that happens. You know,
Yeah,
even when they're going up in elevation, when you're just driving around, that's one of my least favorite things about flying. So yeah, I can deal with it more than Josh over here. But yeah, there's stuff that I definitely don't like about flying, and the ear popping is one of them. And then the same, and also, yeah, sometimes the people you're with on the plane, not really a big fan of that sometimes. And sometimes the people you're with are kind of obnoxious. Or you have the baby behind you, or kids kicking your seat. So
yeah.
yeah.
There's some bridges here in my hometown that are so high up that like when you are driving up the bridge, like about halfway up the bridge, you get the ear popping sensation, which is another thing I don't enjoy about Jacksonville is all the goddamn bridges everywhere that are high as fuck. And
Bridgeville.
yeah.
Does that sound like it should be called Bridgeville instead of Jacksonville?
Well, actually, not to get off topic, but Jacksonville was named after Andrew Jackson, and since they're replacing Andrew Jackson with Harriet Tubman, a lot of people jokingly started calling it Tubville. Whatever. I'm neither here nor there on that, but yeah. So anyway, somewhere over the forest of southern Washington, this crazy motherfucker jumped out of the plane and was
apparently still wearing his sunglasses too. So he was wearing his sunglasses at night.
Cue the Will Smith clip from Independence Day where he from Men in Black where he puts on sunglasses and goes, "The difference between you and me is I make this look damn cool," or whatever he says.
Damn good.
Yeah.
The difference between you and me is I make this look damn good. Or the Corey Hart song, I wear my
sunglasses at night. Yeah. That's one of those songs that like that hook is really cool and then the rest of the song is ruined. It's just
it's pretty lame.
The rest of the song just is downhill.
Around with the guy in shades. Oh no.
It's like, wow, you just took a really cool like hook and just ruined it by everything else. So some of the
that fits for DB Cooper. Don't mess around with the guy in shades.
Don't mess around with the guy in shades. We just lost 4 listeners just then when I started singing. Probably more than 4. Probably half. So somewhere over the forest of southern Washington, he jumped. Some theories are, of course, that he survived. One of the guys they had on the show, because Unsolved Mysteries is pretty famous for this. They have the opposing opinion and the confirming opinion. So the guy who believed he survived, he was saying, we don't know what he was wearing underneath his clothes. He could have had a pair of long underwear on. He could have survived the elements. He could have had a cigarette lighter, to make a fire. He could have had a knife. He could have had essential survival tools to survive in the wild. It was possible. Now
he was also thinking that if he went down in the water, he says something like, "You've got to know how to manage that parachute. You can use it for some flotation." He says now his life expectancy is not going to be very long in that water. It's cold, and you have to think of the time of year it was in. So he probably had a very, very few minutes to get on shore. But I think he could have done this. And then some people did witness a large white object that was seen floating in Lake Merwin, which is near where he dived out of the plane, but divers found nothing.
Yeah, so it's also thought that he could have buried the chute, and whatever. The theories that he didn't make it, of course, was the fact that, they theorized that when he landed, he could have gotten injured.
Yeah.
He didn't have any water, and he perished in the forest. I mean, the only way the only way he wouldn't have made it is if he just didn't land correctly and died on impact. That's the only
Yeah.
way I think he
And
could.
I think you would have found the body by now.
Right.
That's the thing. I mean, they did a big search, and they searched the area where it would be more than likely where he would have fell, where he would have landed. I don't think there's any other way, any other place that he would have landed than this particular area.
Yeah, and this
Um,
this isn't like the Alcatraz case where the guys who escaped from Alcatraz, they had to search a fucking San Francisco Bay, which is just all water, and it's nearly impossible to
almost
pinpoint.
just the ocean, really.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's impossible to pinpoint, one like a particular area in the ocean and drag or just drag the entire area to look for bodies. This is a forest. Yeah, there are rivers, but this is more foresty. There's more land. I mean, you're talking like critters from the wilderness that could have potentially, you know, found his bones, or hunters, or
yeah,
anything. I mean, there could you. This is something where you feel like you would have found more than what was found, which we learn later on. A placard from the same plane that he hijacked was found. I believe it was on February 10th, 1980, on the shore of the Columbia River, 20 miles from Cooper's Jump Point.
yeah. That one, yeah, that was definitely pretty. Yeah, was that the one where they found the people found the? No, I think that was in 1978. In November 1978, a hunter deep in the Washington forest discovered a plastic sign from a 727 that had
Right.
been ripped from the lower stairwell of Flight 305. Like that did stand out to me. I'm like, why is that there?
Well, yeah, and I mean, and they were kind of saying, like, using that as like, see, he's dead, but it's like, well, what does that have to do with anything? The sign just fell
Yeah,
off. That has nothing to do
yeah. Why
with
would?
survival.
What you think he took the sign with him as a souvenir?
Yeah, he would have never wanted to go on without that souvenir. So there's no way he would have survived. Like, what is DB Cooper, just a hardcore like plane aficionado who's like into hardcore collectibles? Like, I gotta bring this to the next 727 plane swap meet to show everyone. Um, but no, probably for me a more compelling possibility for his death is the next little factoid, which is what I
Well,
was
they found the money. So
right.
there's this 15 months later, an even more dramatic discovery was made. On February 10th, 1980, a family was preparing a barbecue on the shore of the Columbia River, 20 miles southwest of Cooper's supposed jump point. They planned to dig a fire pit, but they dug up something else: stacks of water, logged bills totaling the $5,880. Agent Himmelsbach confirmed that was part of Cooper's ransom. There were 294 bills found, and all the serial numbers are on the ransom list. So that money is definitely positively identified as having come from that particular ransom money. But this other guy, who's the guy who's going by, the idea that Cooper lived, he says, it doesn't prove that Cooper perished. I mean, they did not find $200,000. Where's the rest of the money? That's what I want to know. And I agree. I mean, where is the rest of the money?
But then again, they go on to say none of the money has ever turned up in circulation. But then again, it's like, how could you even know that?
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
He could have just took it to Mexico somewhere,
Well,
or overseas, some other country.
If the guy was smart enough to hijack a plane and get away with it, obviously he's smart enough to spend his money in places where they're not going to be looking for that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know. They say it's never turned up in circulation, but again, it's like there's so much money in circulation. How
can you keep track of that?
Yeah, who's monitoring that? What if he went to cash only places and just paid in cash? They stick the cash in their register. I mean, how long is it going to take for that $10 bill to make its way to the FBI, who's keeping an eye out for it? I mean, if we can't even keep people from terrorizing us and these domestic things from happening, how are we monitoring all these bills? I mean, back like now I could maybe see, because there'd be some kind of like
computer
generated algorithm or something, but back then in the fucking 70s, no. No, there's not, I don't think you could keep up with that. So, I mean, that's not a compelling enough reason.
Exactly, because there's a lot of robberies that happened around that time that they probably did not find the money in circulation either. So,
And also, they're not going to try to encourage this behavior on Unsolved Mysteries. So they're not going to
no.
like make it seem like it was a good idea. They're not going to make it seem like it's a
Yeah,
sensible
they
thing.
might have found money in circulation, but they don't want to, put that out there. They don't want to be like, yeah, he got away, and
Now
he's
there
still out there.
there was a
You
guy
can't
named
find him.
there was a guy named Richard McCoy
Yeah,
who extorted $500,000 from another plane, and it was hijacked 5 months after the Cooper
yeah,
incident. He was apprehended and escaped from jail and died
in a gun battle with the FBI.
in a gun battle with the FBI, and he actually matched the description of DB Cooper, and he was retired military, I believe,
Yeah, yeah, he was. He was a former Green Beret.
yeah. So a lot of people think, well, maybe this guy was DB Cooper, but then Florence Schaffner went on to say the composite actually didn't really look like, the guy that she saw. So maybe it was two different people, but
And also on this is a completely different show, but there was a short-lived new version of In Search of that used to air in the Sci-Fi Channel back when it was still SCIFI, not SYFY, whatever it is now.
yeah.
Back when the Sci-Fi Channel was actually good and cool and actually was worth watching. So it was hosted by Mitch Pileggi. Shocker. He was known as Horace Pinker in the film Shocker. He was also in X-Files. He played played Skinner, and there was one of those segments that mentioned DB Cooper. And what's kind of interesting about that is they were talking about some possibility that DB Cooper survived, and that there was this guy who this woman knew who kind of fit the description. And I don't have it as clear. I wish I watched it again. But that was pretty interesting too. But it was a lot of just, oh, this woman is saying this, and I don't know. Some people that just want to be on TV.
Right.
So
Yeah, and if a show can't get super credible witnesses, they'll kind of start grasping at straws and kind of get anyone they can who's loosely affiliated with it to get, I've seen that happen before with certain shows. They can't really get the expert big names, so they kind of just settle for eyewitnesses who, may or may not have much credibility. Yeah. Unsolved Mysteries will go out and tell you if the person that they're interviewing, is credible, or if his credibility is more iffy, which we'll get into in our later segment, Roswell with Bob Lazar. But anyway,
yeah. But Florence, she says she worked with Malin Coleman, a forensic artist. They created a new portrait of DB Cooper. She said Cooper's is a face she'll never forget, but she said because she doesn't believe the composite looks like him, the hair does not look like him, the face does not look like him. So she said it's still strong on my mind. I remember everything: the color of his eyes, the color of his eyebrows, and his features. And I'm like, I don't see. That's kind of how long was she interacting with this guy, and how long ago did it happen? And that's the kind of thing. How much does your brain actually remember exactly how somebody looks like?
Well, what's crazy is, like, a lot of times on Unsolved Mysteries, you'll see they'll use hypnotists, and the amount of information these people are able to recall is crazy.
It is.
I almost want to get put under hypnosis so I can recall information, from just to see if it works, And
then there'll be some crazy thing where you remember some abduction story or something, and then,
No, knowing me and my uninteresting life, it'll be like, oh, that's where I left my keys at one time. Now I remember. But speaking of sci-fi,
sounds like
real
my
quick,
boring ass dreams.
Speaking of the Sci-Fi Channel, remember that show Sliders back in the day?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to go out in left field on that one, but yeah, I remember that show. I remember that show was pretty awesome. But anyway, So, this whole DB Cooper thing, it's really become a legend. A lot of people are very fascinated by it. A lot of people, it's kind of, there's this weird thing in the United States or maybe in other countries, but I can only speak for the country I live in. We tend to like stories like this,
Yeah.
it's because really nobody got hurt. And it's kind of a screw you to the government to a
There
certain.
was a movie too. I haven't seen it yet. I know it stars Treat Williams though. Treat Williams plays DB Cooper, and I like Treat Williams as an actor because I liked him in films like Deep Rising, and he was hamming it up in The Phantom, but I enjoyed him in that too.
If you guys
So,
can't tell, Mike is the movie guy, and I'm the game guy. I don't know who any of these people are.
but yeah, I think it was called like The Mysterious Case of DB Cooper or something. But yeah, I think it's fascinating because of the fact that he just disappeared without a trace. I mean, nothing of his clothing, his body wasn't found. There wasn't anything like that found anywhere. They found some money and they found something from the stairwell of the plane, but that's all they found. And that whole catch me if you can type thing, the whole idea that there's a criminal who like outsmarted everybody and is still out there. It's fast. It's as interesting as it's the Zodiac case, but it's less lethal.
Well, I was going to compare it to again. I was going to bring it back to the Alcatraz thing.
Well, it's
It's
definitely that. I mean, you could definitely make that comparison as well.
because it's like again in the Alcatraz thing, it's like an underdog story. Like nobody really got hurt, and it just it's impressive to
Uh,
see human ingenuity at its most evil or at its most ingenious, whatever
yeah,
take you want to take on it. I mean, I think the fact that he went out of his way not to hurt anybody. I mean, obviously he had the bomb on the plane and everything, but I mean, I don't think he wanted to use it. He wanted to get his money, which he did. And dude, I remember seeing something on this a long time ago, and they like opened up like a fucking restaurant in Florida or something. It's called DB Cooper's or something like that. I shit you not. Like there's this
over
whole
in Florida, of course,
yeah.
where you're at.
Yeah, my home state. Not so. That's what we have. As comedian
Restaurants named after notorious criminals.
as comedian Bill Burr once put Florida, a sunny place for shady people. But
Maybe
yeah,
maybe it was owned and operated by DB Cooper himself.
hiding in plain sight kind of deal. Yeah, you never know. If
Sounds like a good idea for like a movie or something. Like some notorious criminal just hiding in plain sight. And nobody seems to know.
So if your life depended on it, Mike, and someone held a gun to your head and said, "Do you think he lived or died?" What would you?
I would probably say I think he survived because there's not enough. Because first off, no body was found, but at the same time, it's kind of iffy because it's been so long and I got any more leads. So
You said you had an update to this, right?
yeah, as far as the FBI is concerned, the mystery of DB Cooper, skyjacker extraordinaire, is going to stay unsolved. It's been 45 years. No one has ever conclusively been fingered as Cooper, though there have been many solid suspects, and the case is too cold to ever revive. And from the FBI's announcement about the closure, this is the actual statement from the FBI. Following one of the longest and most exhaustive investigations in our history, on July 8th, 2016, the FBI redirected resources allocated to the D.B. Cooper case in order to focus on other investigative priorities. During the course of the 45-year Norjack investigation, the FBI exhaustively reviewed all credible leads, coordinated between multiple field offices to conduct searches, collected all available evidence, and interviewed all identified witnesses. Over the years, the FBI has applied numerous new and innovative investigative techniques, as well as examined countless items at the FBI laboratory. Evidence obtained during the course of the investigation will now be preserved for historical purposes at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C.
So that's funny to me that you said they're going to stop utilizing resources in the case, aka money and manpower. So this whole time they've still been spending money on solving this case. Like that's crazy to me.
Yeah, but it is one of the most infamous and well-known uh, crime cases in the United States. So I could see why they would spend that much time and money trying to finally solve it, because as far as the FBI is concerned, that would be a huge victory for them, even if it was years later.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I guess if you have to put a gun to my head, I mean, I was kind of going with the whole he's alive, but then I'm like, I don't know. I think that's the main thing. It's in, it's, I'm in the middle. Like, he could be dead, but then again, he could be still alive. He could have been that guy who was shot by the police, or, he could be, looking at the news and laughing his ass off. Be like, I got away with it. You never caught me, and you never will.
Well, that's like that show, the world's most dangerous police chases. They only show you the police chases where they apprehend the criminals. They don't show you the police chases where the criminal gets away, which does happen. They just don't want
It happens a lot, yeah.
They just don't want you to know that.
No.
So it is possible for people to commit huge crimes and get away with them and never get caught. I mean, law enforcement, and for good reason, they just don't want people to believe that, because obviously if that was perpetuated, then people would just go out and try it, more and more. I mean, yeah. I have a conscience, so I wouldn't do it anyway, but even if I did, I wouldn't, just for the simple fact that I feel like I would get caught.
Yeah.
Because I am a dumbass, and I know I would fuck it up somehow, and so, yeah, there you go. So do we have anything else on the D.B. Cooper case that we want to talk about?
I really don't have anything else to say, except, don't mess around with the guy in the shades.
Good Lord. Alrighty, moving on to our next case, we have the Black Widow, Marie Hilley.
This is an interesting case because it was featured on Unsolved Mysteries at first when they were covering diabolical minds. I think it was a whole episode that was just about diabolical minds, and it didn't just focus on, it really didn't, it was different from Unsolved Mysteries because there wasn't a lot of unsolved cases that they were covering. They were taught, they profiled other people, including G. Daniel Walker, which is pretty crazy. This is a guy who was confirmed sociopath and with psychopathic tendencies, who had robbed a bunch of things and done a lot of stuff and was in jail for a long time. And Ted Bundy, they profiled him, and Saddam Hussein, they actually profiled as a diabolical mind, and Hitler, and then they covered Marie Hilley, because they wanted to be, they wanted to include both genders. They didn't want to just be like, oh, it's all about men and only men are crazy, which is definitely not the case, as shown by stuff with the case, this particular case, and the one where I did a video about the Baskin family. That's a pretty crazy case too. So this is about a notorious sociopath named Marie Hilley.
Yes, Frank and Marie Hilley were high school sweethearts. They built a life, and they were the envy of Anniston, Alabama. They had 2 kids, Carol and Mike. Oh, nice name.
Yeah.
Marie was
Sounds familiar.
Marie was a perfect wife, except for her tendency to overspend. But appearances do deceive. The son, Mike, started having stomach problems 2 or 3 months after an insurance policy was taken out on him for $25,000. Doctors could not diagnose his stomach ailments, and they oddly went away when he left home for school. When he left, then the husband, Frank, mysteriously took ill. At that point as well, their marriage started to fall apart. When Frank came home one day and he informed his son Mike about this, he found Marie in bed with one of her employers. Now, why he didn't beat someone's ass in that case, I don't know, but he just was like...
That is an interesting, little point that kind of is overlooked about this case. Yeah, the fact is, like, why did he stay with her after that? Why didn't he kick some ass? Or do something. I
When I
mean,
say kick some
I'm
ass,
not saying beat her ass. I'm
yeah,
not saying
I'm saying
that.
he should have beaten the guy's ass. I'm not advocating violence against women in any way, but it does tend to happen in those situations. Although it's probably not the right thing to do.
Or he could beat her ass with with a piece of paper in terms of the divorce papers.
Right.
Not like actual physical
Well,
beating.
actually, yeah, in cases like that where the spouse like cheats on the husband, it's the divorce is always, well, I don't know this for sure. Some people out there might disagree if they've gone through this themselves, but it's usually in favor of the person who was cheated on, because like that
Yeah.
infidelity, that's a no-no, and you don't
But some people, they're raised a certain way, and it's like you just stick through it. You stick with the marriage even though it's falling apart.
Oh
And
God, ain't that the truth? Especially
yeah,
the old school generation. I mean, my step grandfather, I should say, is a piece of shit, and my grandma, who's passed away since then or now, or she's dead. That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
She stayed with my step grandfather forever, and that's just how, especially the earlier generations, that's just how they were brought up, and it was seen as a very big social no-no to be divorced.
sounds like that a similar case here.
Right. I mean, it's very common, and Marie Hilley, the kind of it's a kind of sociopath she
Yeah,
was. That would have affected her status and how she looked to the community. So she didn't want that. She placed a high value on prominence and reputation, and a divorce would have destroyed that.
exactly.
So within 2 weeks of it confiding in Mike, Frank mysteriously got worse.
Yeah,
When he was in the hospital, Marie never left his side. She tenderly took care of him. Mike thought maybe this would be the catalyst that would bring them closer together.
yeah,
And then Frank died on May 25th, 1975. The official cause was hepatitis, but nobody suspected what really happened. Now, they have a psychologist that they interview in the segment who explains that the sociopath will love you for what you can do for them,
yeah. I
not
love. Yeah,
not who you are or what you are. When you become no longer necessary, they will just throw you away, and if that means murder, so be it.
yeah. That's
Maurice,
typical sociopathic behavior.
yeah,
And there's a lot of people out there that it's kind of hard for you to know who's a sociopath and who isn't. And, you could be working with a sociopath and you don't know it. You could be married to one, your parents could be one. Sociopaths are not the same as psychopaths. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be pointed out, because there's a lot of people who are kind of just lump different sort of mental illnesses and stuff into one category. They're all just crazy, psychopaths. Sociopaths, they don't have any emotion. They don't have any emotional connection with other people. They look at the world as just, their playground, and they don't care about any consequences that would happen with their actions. They probably don't even think there are any consequences.
it's funny you say you shouldn't lump everything, all mental disorders into one chunk. Going back to the case we talked about last week with the woman who was scared to death,
Yeah,
who actually ended up, who was believed to have killed herself.
yeah,
I thought it was funny that her therapist said it was the fact that nobody believed her that ultimately drove her crazy. And I just thought it was funny that a psychologist used the term crazy, because
yeah, yeah,
most people trained in the mental health industry or profession, not industry, the profession, they don't use the word crazy to define somebody with mental illness. I just thought that was kind of funny.
yeah.
But no, I definitely have. I can honestly say I have known two sociopathic women in my life. They were friends of mine. Thankfully, they weren't my parent or girlfriend or anything like that. But no, I've known two women who would literally tell you whatever you want to hear to ingratiate themselves to you. And they were everything to everyone, and secretly they were doing all this nefarious shit. So, I mean, this is definitely the worst kind of person as far as mind manipulation and someone that you would.
It's crazy. Sociopaths are like, and like what people never expected, it was Marie. No one would ever think she would do anything like, what she would end up doing. And that's because, they give this appearance like they're an upstanding part of, society, or they're well-known and well-respected individuals in their community. And, psychopaths, I think psychopaths are a lot different. You can kind of tell who's a psychopath and who isn't. Sociopaths are a little bit harder to identify right from the get-go. And that's terrifying to me because they're kind of like chameleons in that sense. You just don't, it's really hard to tell until it's already too late and you've already been killed by one, or you've already been screwed by a sociopath.
Well, the only thing convenient is in this country we do have a retention facility that keeps most of our sociopaths, so it's convenient for us to know where they are, and that would be Washington, D.C. Boom! I just went political on your ass. The Uncovering Unsolved Mysteries podcast just went political. No, I'm just joking, but I'm not joking. Most politicians are sociopaths, especially a certain one running for the presidency. I won't name any names, but yeah, well, I guess you could say they both are. So anyway, Marie spent very little time mourning after her husband passed away. The proceeds from his life insurance totaled $30,000. Marie refurbished her house, bought a car, draped herself in expensive clothing and accessories.
And jewelry.
Various businesses started filing complaints, though, because she wasn't able to pay her bills. She owed more than what she had.
And what's crazy, too, is she would try to pawn off these gifts and these baubles and these expensive stuff that she bought as like, oh, my son will pay for them.
Right.
So she's like, oh, Mike, you need to, he's going to pay for it. So then Mike, of course, finds out about this, and he has the same reaction that this Mike would have, and being like, what the fuck is this? Like, is this bullshit? I don't have the money to pay for this. What the hell?
Oh, it's essentially stealing his identity. I mean, yeah. His good reputation. I mean, that's what she did. It's like what the guy said. He was just a resource to be exploited. It didn't matter that it was her own son. Yeah,
and then I love the reenactment stuff, especially the actress who plays Marie. She's great in this.
She really is.
And, this whole scene where Mike is basically telling, he basically has to force his mom. It's like, if I have to carry you into the car to go to the bank or whatever, I will do it because you're paying me back.
Yeah, he wanted her to cash in his father's stocks. And she said, I will not do it. That's all the money I have left in the world, and I will not spend it. So now all of a sudden she becomes the money miser, the penny pincher, the skinflint. Then now all of a sudden she doesn't want to spend money, so which is, again, sociopathic manipulation to just get him off of her back. And like you said, he goes, if I literally have to pick you up and put you in the car, we're going to the bank. There are no questions. Well, right after that.
Imagine that, just picking up the mom and just throwing her in the car.
So after that, he ate breakfast, which she cooked. And as he put it, he goes, I got sicker than I had ever been. So, I mean, you're starting to kind of see what's starting to happen.
Yeah.
Mike returned to Florida and recovered. At this point, Mike had a wife and kids. His sister Carol, though, continued to get sick. So now his sister, who still lives there...
she was so sick that her spinal system was completely disabled, so she was like paralyzed.
Yeah, she was spending 6 months in and out of the hospital. And then finally, Marie, the mother, tells Carol, her daughter, about some experimental medicine that her friend told her about, and that she was going to inject her with this medicine, but the only condition was Carol couldn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That scared me. That was pretty scary. That reminded me of, kind of stuff you'd see like in a Stephen King story or something.
Well, it
You
reminds me of
know.
that movie The Sixth Sense. Like,
Yeah, The Sixth Sense.
yeah, when Haley Joel Osment's character goes over to the house, and
Yeah.
he sees the dead girl under the bed, and she points him to a box, and in the box is a videotape of her playing with her dolls, and then she hears her mom coming, so she runs and acts like she's asleep in bed, and her mom is putting poison in her soup right in front of the
Yeah.
camera, and
Yeah.
he plays the tape, and the father finds out what blah blah blah.
Yeah.
This again kind of plays into that whole Munchausen syndrome thing I was talking about a while back, where the mom will keep the kids ill to bring attention to herself. But in Marie's case, she just wanted the damn money. She didn't care about the attention. So
Exactly.
after injecting her with this experimental medicine, Mike remembered that the aunt was telling. His aunt basically said that Marie was keeping Carol in seclusion and not letting anybody see her.
Yeah.
Um,
And
Mike,
so he feared for her life, of course.
right. But not at first, though. Like, he didn't put the two and two together that his father died, and then 4 years later, Carol's getting sick. At first,
Yeah.
he wasn't able to put the two and two together. But then when he finally does, he demanded that the hospital re-examine Carol. Upon doing this, the doctors checked for telltale signs of arsenic poisoning, which are these unmistakable white lines across the fingernails. I thought that was a pretty cool scene
Yeah.
in the segment
Yeah.
where they showed that, because everyone has gotten those little white dots under their fingernails. I believe it
Yeah.
means that you're lacking in calcium or vitamin C.
Yeah.
It's a vitamin deficiency, but
Yeah.
anyway, it's at that point that the secret was out. That Mike knew it was Marie. Marie was doing it the whole time, and he had to re-examine everything that his mom taught him at that point. I mean, think about that. Really think about that. You find out your mom killed your dad, essentially, was making everyone else sick. I mean, you have to re-examine everything that you're
He would have
taught.
killed you
Yeah.
easily if Mike hadn't left for college or whatever,
And it's
that
one of
she
those
probably would have killed him.
it's one of those moments where the light bulb goes on in your head and you're like, holy shit, she killed my dad. And it
Yeah.
all starts making sense. When it
And
all
that's
starts
not something that any son, daughter would ever want to experience or feel or think when it comes to their own mother. Like, that's just a nightmare.
right. So Jack Levin, another psychologist in this segment that they interview, says a woman sociopath is someone who leads a double life. They fool family and friends, often the last person you suspect at all. So in 1979, Marie was arrested for passing off bad checks, and that arrest probably saved Carol's life because Marie wasn't able to inject her with this bullshit. So basically, at that point, a warrant was put out for Marie's arrest. Before that happened, Mike wanted to commission a second autopsy for the dad. Marie quietly
Right.
slipped out of town 2 weeks before the results were released, and then after that, the arrest warrant was issued for charging Marie with the murder of her husband. She had disappeared, and 700 miles away from Anniston in Fort
Florida.
Lauderdale, Florida, my state, yet again, Marie Hilley resurfaced as Robbie Hannon. And this gentleman named John Holman, as they say, was pleased to meet her. Robbie told John that she was a widow who was going to inherit a vast estate, and she had a life-threatening brain cancer. So this guy that she, I guess, met at a bar became basically her next target.
I liked how they described this whole scenario. Like, she was like the perfect thing, She was rich, she had money, she was sick, she's gonna die soon.
The possibilities seemed endless.
Just like, just that cracked me up.
Dude, they have such great lines in that show from time to time. They had one in the Brandon Lee segment where he's explaining how a blank works in a gun, and Robert Stack's like talking about how a bullet works, and he's like, simple, deadly. It's just awesome. We'll have to cover the Brandon Lee segment because that's a really good one too.
Yeah, that is.
Anyway,
She had
so
blonde hair and everything. She changed her look up. The actress, once again, who plays Marie's, once again, fantastic in this. She reminds me of Adrienne Barbeau a little bit, which is pretty cool because I'm a fan of her work. So yeah, so she shows up as Robbie Hannon. She meets up with John. They begin dating and they get married. And sometime later, Robbie Hannon takes a short vacation to Texas, whereupon John Holman got a call from her twin sister, Terry Martin, that Robbie had died. So she had finally succumbed to the brain cancer. So after getting to know Terry Martin by phone, John wished to meet her in Florida. But in actuality, Marie Hilley had once again reinvented herself as Terry Martin, getting in shape and coloring her hair blonde. So that's where she gets the blonde hairdo is after that. So she had normal whatever hair, brunette, whatever beforehand as Robbie Hannon, and then now she's Terry Martin.
so let's just emphasize the gravity of this situation. This bitch Marie Hilley essentially tries to kill her family, moves to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, woos this guy who I guess she assumes has money named John Holman, tells him that her brain cancer is getting worse, goes to Texas, calls him pretending to be a twin sister named Terry, informs him that Robbie has in fact died and there's nothing more for him to do because her body was donated to science, which I would call bullshit on that if I was John, but him being the dumbass dude that he is, just, oh, okay. Then she dyes her hair blonde, loses 20 pounds, just showing an incredible amount of restraint and willpower. Returns back.
The audacity. Yeah.
And lives with the dude as the twin sister for 2 months.
Yeah.
The neighbors were super suspicious and they tried to verify her story, and of course, nothing checked out. The most ironic part of all of this and how she finally ended up getting caught was her age and description happened to match one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives.
Yeah.
She was taken into custody for questioning, and that's when they found out that she was, in fact, Marie Hilley. Marie Hilley was sentenced to life plus 20 years. In 87,
she was arrested in 1982. Yeah.
Yeah. In 1987, she escaped from prison and died 3 days later from prolonged exposure to the cold. What the fuck?
I know. When I first heard that, I was like, "Damn, that's cold." But that's a perfect ending for such a cold woman.
I mean, what a life, man! Like
she's cold as ice.
Like, you literally couldn't make this shit up. I mean...
No, I know. Like, the whole... Like, I remember when I first saw this, I was like, we got to talk about this because of the whole twin sister thing. It's just... I mean, the arsenic poisoning was bad enough, and this is crazy enough as it is, for parents, a mother to poison her husband and try to kill her kids. But... Just for, money. But the whole twin sister thing just put it over the top, and you're just like, what the fuck? This lady is just... She's not only a sociopath, but damn, she's pretty fucking clever, I have to admit.
I mean,
definitely got some big brass balls.
she is kind of like Psycho though, because there was like a 50% chance that she could have come back as this Terry chick, and John would have been like, "Are you crazy? I know you're Robbie. I know you just dyed your." It's like, this is bullshit. I'm calling the cops. There was a 50% chance that he could have done that. She didn't know for sure that he was going to just accept her at face value, or maybe she lived with him long enough to know he was just a dumbass.
He was just oblivious, He was just like you were saying, like,
looks good to me. Can I still have sex with you?
He was so desperate for sex, at this point in time. It was just like, he'll believe anything.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
You're Terry Martin, huh? Robbie's twin sister. All right, you're all right.
Say, I've always wanted to, do it with twins. Okay, now our show is officially lowbrow. But
Oh, no, come on.
but I don't know, like that's just that's crazy, and I mean it's not outside of the realm of possibility. I like I said, I've known people like this, and yeah, they're just the worst kind of people because it's like what someone said, one of the professionals that they interviewed said that they're good at playing the game of life. They
Yeah,
know
I love that.
they know how to imitate human emotion and empathize and all that,
Yeah,
but they're almost like an alien. They're almost like someone pantomiming as a human being, but they themselves are not a human being.
yeah, I love that. I love that quote from one of the psychologists. Yeah, that was great. That sums up a sociopath perfectly. And this type of behavior that she did is kind of alien-like. The whole, oh, don't care about the percentages. I don't give a shit that he might recognize me as, Robbie instead of Terry, Robbie's twin sister. I'm just gonna do it.
I think a good sociopath also like they know how to pick their marks.
Yeah.
Like they know how to pick the people who are gonna most likely buy into their lines of bullshit.
I also think serial killers also have sociopathic tendencies. I
Well, yeah.
don't think they're just psychopaths. I think they have psychopathic tendencies as well as sociopathic tendencies, especially somebody like Ted Bundy, who was this very handsome man who kind of knew what he wanted and knew how to get around. I mean, even look at somebody like uh, Gacy. He was a pillar of the community. He was actually involved in politics. He there was pictures of him, I think, with the president,
Mm-hmm.
or like So it's that there's the serial killers. They were a lot more intelligent and probably sociopathic than even more. They were probably psychopathic. They were still had definitely had psychopathic tendencies, but I think they're a bit mix of both, which is the worst. Which is the worst kind of criminal. Is somebody who's sociopathic and psychopathic, and is equally skilled at both.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at people like Adolf Hitler, Saddam Hussein. Unsolved Mysteries did a segment about this called it was called World Leaders on the Ultimate Collection box set. I don't know what it's called on the regular segments, but
Yeah.
they dive into this sociopathic mindset. All
All
right,
right.
our next segment is going to be the Roswell / Area 51 connection. Now, we already spoke about the Roswell incident, that it was covered up by the government. Now we're going to be going into Area 51 and how that connects with Roswell. We're going to be looking at this guy's story, Glenn Dennis, which, according to Robert Stack, was too compelling to be ignored. In 1947, Glenn Dennis was 22 years old and out of college. That summer, he worked as a mortician's assistant at a funeral home in Roswell. 2 days before the infamous flying saucer story broke, Glenn received a strange phone call from the Roswell Air Base. The mortician mortuary officer was wanting to know what size hermetically sealed baby caskets did they have. That afternoon, Dennis was called to transport an injured military personnel to the air base. And when he got to the base, he saw it was surrounded by MPs, military personnel. Two ambulances. Go ahead.
Yeah. First off, by the just the whole asking for hermetically sealed baby caskets.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that you're just like, what? That's not something you hear every day out of nowhere, where, somebody, and then they say specifically 3 feet 6 inches, or did we have maybe no larger than a 4-foot hermetically sealed casket? Right off the bat, you're kind of just questioning things. You're like, I normally don't get calls like that, especially from the military, I think.
Right.
It's from the Roswell Air Base.
Yeah, so already something was afoot. So as he arrives, he two ambulances catch his attention, In the back of the ambulances, the doors are open slightly, and he could see quite a bit of wreckage, and it looked like stainless steel that came in contact with a great deal of heat. The stainless steel had a bluish, purplish tint to it. And one of the pieces looked like it had Egyptian hieroglyphics on it. Now, for some reason, this scene always just creeped me the fuck out because... Yeah, like the doors are open and you can just kind of see this alien material in the back of the, it's just like bizarre.
And it's purplish and blue, and the Egyptian hieroglyphics, that ties into the Roswell story, where that ties into, I think, Mac Brazel, or what is the other guy, the military guy who actually was able to take some of the wreckage home and inspected it. You notice, these, what look like hieroglyphics on the metal.
Right.
So that kind of ties into some of the other stories that some of the other people who actually saw the wreckage were saying earlier.
So, according to Glenn Dennis, the confusion on the base that day was so great, he didn't think one man knew what the other man was doing. It didn't even look like they knew each other. Like, these people were just brought in from different bases. Like, that's how crazy the situation was up there. They had to call in other people from the other bases. Glenn eventually approaches a higher up in command from the military, and he says he has a contract with the base, and he's from the funeral home. And the officer then tells Glenn that, well, this area is off limits to everybody, and you have to leave. And he had 2 MPs escort him out. Well, as that was happening, then this general guy steps out of the room and he brings him back.
And I love this line. This guy says 2 MPs came up and they said, "Sir, we have to escort you back to your mortuary." And that's when he said, "Look, mister, somebody will be picking your bones out of the sand if you go starting a lot of rumors."
Right. That's what the general guy said to Glenn, like... And then, after that, well, before he said that, Glenn was like, because at first he was telling him, you didn't see anything, you didn't hear anything, which is just classic government, it's almost like become like a trope, like a stereotype at this point. Like, you didn't see.
And I like the actor, his performance here, where, the actor who's playing Glenn in this, he's all like, "Oh, don't tell me that," that kind of thing, where he was kind of like defensive at first.
Yeah, he's like, "Don't tell me what." He's like, "I'm a civilian. You can't tell me, that." And then he said, "Mister, someone will be picking your bones out of the sand if you go around spreading a lot of rumors."
So then you're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Right.
So he goes to leave, and at that point, a door opens up, and a nurse he personally knew came out and said, "You better get out of here. You're going to get in a lot of trouble." So naturally, Glenn was curious, and he was mad, and the first person he knew to contact was his nurse friend. Well, the next day, the nurse agreed to meet with him and tell him what happened at the base that day on the condition that Glenn never agreed to reveal her identity. So they met up at what looked like some mess hall or something. It was abandoned. It was just those 2 in there by themselves. And she was talking about how she went into the supply room to get some bandages, and there was officers in there, and they ordered her to take notes. And there was these 2 old hospital gurneys with 2 crash bags and 2 very mutilated small bodies, but she was saying they weren't children. One of the officers had long forceps and turned the hand over that had been severed. It was a fragile hand. It only had about 4 fingers. And there was these little suction cups at the end of the fingers. The head was large. The eyes were set back in the head. They only had 2 ear canals. There was no actual ear structure around the ear canal. There was 2 orifices for the nose. There was no actual nose structure. There was a 1-inch slit for the mouth and no teeth, maybe just like a little piece of cartilage. And then next to that bag, there was a whole other creature that wasn't mutilated. It was fully intact. In all, the nurse claimed to see 3 bodies and claimed that they were not earthly in origin. And in the actual segment, they show that she's like making doodles of these creatures, and it's just so creepy because it's like...
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it looked like the typical gray that you see.
It was your typical gray. What's known as a small gray. So then after that encounter, Glenn returned to his office. And on his desk was the infamous version of the Roswell Daily Record with the flying saucer story. He never saw that nurse again, and there was rumors that she died in a plane crash leaving the country. Now, I mean, that sounds obviously like a convenient little story that, oh, yeah, she died in a plane crash leaving the country. Well, you know, if you believe...
Could have been a setup. I mean, if you believe in the government, you know, it could have been a setup. They were like, you know, we don't want you. You said something. We found out you said something.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, they do that. And again, I referenced the
silenced.
I referenced the UFO Odyssey segment in Withville, Kentucky, where they're threatening the man. We got to do that segment next because that one's just too good to not talk about. They talk about, you know, the guy gets the anonymous phone call from the retired military person saying, you know, they will get to you. They will swab your doorknobs with, you know, this chemical warfare. They can, you know, get cancer in you, and just saying all this creepy stuff, and it was actually recorded. So yeah, they probably killed her. They probably took her out and covered it up. If you do believe all of this, which again, this guy's story is just a story, but I mean, you know.
Well, I mean, the whole stuff with the woman, like what he's saying, I mean, it sounds very detailed to the point where I don't know. It sounds like when he originally told this story, this is not around the time when Greys or I guess this type of stuff was well known, but at the same time, maybe I don't know. See, I don't know. It could be just a story, but there's a lot of details here. It seems kind of, I don't know. It seems a little bit too detailed to me that it was just completely made up.
And I'm sorry, but I've gotten a little biased to the point to where if it's on Unsolved Mysteries, I've come to expect a certain quality from them that I don't even. I hold Unsolved Mysteries up to as far as journalism is concerned, I hold them up to a higher regard than even like the news, the network news.
But then we got Ghost Boy, so you know that was just some mom trying to get money. So,
well,
you know.
I don't blame Unsolved Mysteries for that, because I think Unsolved Mysteries has already, when it comes to ghost stories, they've already kind of pretty much gone out and said, you know, let's face it, we love these kind of stories, you know, and they kind of just present it and go, here it is, you know, we're just presenting it. We're by no means, you know, but this Glenn Dennis guy, I feel like he had to have been vetted to a certain extent before he came on this show. And if you see the guy, I mean, I'm pretty good at smelling bullshit, and this is a very older gentleman. He seemed very much like a straight shooter. Like, I mean, just his age. The guy looked like he was in his 70s. I just don't, you know, he wasn't plugging a book or anything. I don't see really why he would care to even go on a show like that at that age unless he just wanted to tell his story about what he encountered.
Yeah.
So, the nurse apparently dies on a plane crash leaving the country. He says he believes the nurse's story because, according to him, he didn't think the nurse knew how to lie, which, you know, is just kind of a nicety that he's...
An example of the times.
Yeah.
You know, that's sort of the way that people thought back then.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
And then they bring in the connection with Area 51, which is then the other part of this particular segment. And of course, as we know, Area 51 is a secretive military base located in the Nevada desert, several hundred miles northwest of Las Vegas near the White Sands Missile Range. It's located at the center of UFO research and legends of extraterrestrial folklore. It's located 600 miles west of Roswell, New Mexico, where the infamous Roswell UFO crashed in 1947. And some believe that the UFO that crashed there may have been sent to Area 51. I mean, it's referenced in Independence Day, so, but that doesn't mean necessarily it's true. But you know, I always found that kind of funny because the whole thing in Independence Day, where it's all like, "What do you mean Area 51?" And it's like, "Oh, that doesn't exist." And it's like, that's not entirely true." You know, and then the president's all like, "What? What do you mean by this?" It's like, "Why wasn't I notified about any of this?" It's like, 2 words, sir: plausible deniability. It's not seen on any map, and even though it can be seen from a ridge by the naked eye, the military claims it does not exist. Well, it's seen from Google Maps, but, you know, it apparently has been there since the 1960s. It is a site where advanced military aircraft have been tested there at night. Bob Lazar, I think he's interviewed here, claims that he worked there at a site near Area 51, and that he had worked with UFOs and that the government has them hidden. He mentioned a couple different models of UFOs. He had them sketched as well. Bob claims in March of 1989, not 1889.
Damn.
He witnessed the test flight of a UFO by the government, and some believe Bob is a fraud, while others are certain that he's genuine. And there are other witnesses who claim to seeing the UFOs as well. When Unsolved Mysteries asked the government about Area 51, of course they denied that the base existed. Bob believes the secrecy is not just hiding alien spacecraft, but also the bodies of aliens. I love how the government, in regards to Area 51, is always like this. It doesn't exist. It's on. I can see it on Google Maps, and there's pictures of a fence that's around the area that says trespassers will be shot. It doesn't exist. Stop lying to me. We know it exists. Whatever is going on there, whether it's UFO testing or experiments or aircraft testing, don't lie to me and say it doesn't exist. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved in the episode how the Bob Lazar, which, okay, now if I said that Glenn Dennis seemed believable, Bob Lazar comes off as suspect.
Yeah, he does.
I am very dubious on Bob Lazar. He's got an air of just nonchalantness. He's very nonchalant in how he's talking about it. He's very aloof.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how he witnessed the flight of one of the UFOs that they were testing at the time, because they had him work on a different kind of propulsion system that was not propeller or fuel, like a jet engine. It was a different kind of propulsion system, the kind that he was interested in at the time. And so they brought out a UFO that they named the Sport Model. And he was talking. Yeah, that's hilarious.
It's like it's a convertible or
America,
some shit.
fuck yeah! We're gonna call it the Sport Model.
Come get your Sport Model UFO.
Yeah, so he's talking about how this UFO they brought out, and it's your typical saucer. The image that you have in your mind right now of a UFO. That's what it looked like. He said that it hovered up a few feet in the air, and it got even higher, and then he said the noise completely stopped, and he said how bizarre it was seeing something so massive or so big in the sky making absolutely zero noise. And I actually thought about that, like, picture in your mind's eye this just very large craft, it could be a jet or anything, just hovering in midair making no sound.
That would be so bizarre.
That would be scary.
And it would be scary. It's like the Belgian UFO case, which would be another one we definitely should talk about sometime.
Yeah.
Because that one, that's the same sort of thing. They're seeing this giant object that's just floating in the sky. It's not making any noise. You're just like, No, that's the moment where you realize I'm not alone in this universe.
Because in physics, for a big motherfucker to be up in the air, there's got to be a lot of motherfuckers inside of it that's making it go, whether it be engines or propellers and such. So us as human beings have become accustomed to the bigger the fucking thing we see, the louder it's going to get. Like a big old rocket that we shoot into space, it's got some big old rocket engines on it, and there's a lot of noise and fire and so on and so forth. Therefore, it makes it all the more stranger when you see this large saucer-like device floating around with seemingly no problems and not making any noise whatsoever. That is scary because it doesn't make sense in our logical brain.
Exactly.
That's what this guy claims he sees. He said it flew to the right, flew to the left, and he goes, it was rather uneventful, then kind of laughs cheekily and goes, well, as uneventful as a flying saucer, a test flight of a flying saucer could be. So this guy's a character. He also says that he saw alien autopsy photos. He said they were black and white. He says, I could not tell you from what time period these things came from, but it was the being was dead. It was just an upper chest photo. It was like a T-type incision. And what was removed was just one large organ-like thing. So then they...
That ties into this, like, video that was aired on Fox, Alien Autopsy,
It's a very
which is,
popular video that not only was aired on Fox, like many TV shows aired this video. It's kind of an infamous video at this point.
yeah, a lot of, TV stations aired it, yeah.
It shows in black and white an actual alien autopsy being conducted. I mean, they cut into its head to show its brain.
But I think it's recently been debunked, like, as, like...
It has been debunked,
Yeah.
which is kind of sad, but
They did a good job. It was a pretty good, good try there. Good practical effects on the alien, stuff like that. They did a good job trying to make it look like an old video. So
the coolest thing I thought about the alien autopsy from the faked video, though, one thing that I thought was just like,
except other than Randall Frakes hosting it, Captain Riker, hosting the video. Yeah, because he did. Randall Frakes hosted the video, like, alien autopsy, fact or fiction.
Well, I like, because there's a scene in the autopsy where they take a scalpel and, because aliens are what are known as grays, the type that you think of with the big head and the black eyes. They take a scalpel and they make slits on the top of the being's eyes, and they pull down the eyes like a film, and then you see these big ass human-like eyeballs with an iris and a pupil, and the eyes are almost rolled in the back of its head. And so it's almost suggesting that the black that you see in the alien's eyes is almost like a third eyelid or something like that keeps them from having to blink or something like that. So I thought that was pretty cool, and it seems like maybe that's what that really is, on an actual gray. But anyway, so yeah.
You interviewed this guy who did the UFO, then he helped write the UFO encyclopedia or something? They interviewed that guy? Is that who they interview next?
Yes, yeah. And he was talking about how, from the Lazar comment about how he saw the autopsy photos, not the faked ones, but he apparently saw genuine ones. The next guy they interview was talking about how this shows that we're dealing with not just one species, but several species of aliens that all have several different motives, which is interesting because that's something that I was mentioning in the previous UFO segment, is how the alien crafts are, some are similar in description, but then there's others that are completely different.
Yeah.
Going back to the Belgian UFO, they were triangular shaped and ginormous. And then other ones are your more traditional saucer shape, and how there's variations in the look.
They even have video footage of the Area 51, like, would look like a light in the sky. It was kind of blurry, though. So it's like, I don't know what that is. Like, it could just be test aircraft.
Yeah, I love like the footage in Unsolved Mysteries that they show, like the home, the home video camera footage they show, because it's literally the worst quality. It's at like 230p or something like that.
240, 240p or like 140p, like below 240p.
Yeah, it's just like, and then they always, like, because back at the time, like, nobody really knew about like digital recording, and so they would always say things like, This footage has been specially digitally enhanced, and really all it is a digital zoom that they did. But nobody would know that terminology back in those days. But it's not like the movies or the TV shows where it's like a science fiction thing and it's like zoom in, enhance, and then it's a blurry image, and then the computer just magically.
Oh yeah, like that bullshit, like CSI and stuff like that, where they zoom in on the reflection of something in somebody's pupil, and then they're able to like zoom in some more and get a perfect picture of the killer or whatever.
It goes from a grainy pixelated blur to like this perfect like 1080 like definition of like a face, like the computer can just somehow enhance it to make it. It's like the computer doesn't have that graphical information because the picture wasn't taken well enough, so there's no way that it could compensate for those pixels that just aren't there to fill in and make a full quality image, unless there was some kind of guessing on the computer's part.
Magic. Or it's magic.
Or magic, yeah. Magic is you know.
Or it's an alien computer that they stole.
Hey man, we can talk about UFOs and ghosts being real all day long, but whenever you start talking about magic being real, that's when I got to call bullshit. I'm trying to keep some credibility to this podcast.
I'm joking.
I know.
Come on.
I know.
I don't believe in magic. The only magic that is the magic tricks and stuff like that. That's sleight of hand stuff.
Only you know, like, you know, Bigfoot can be fighting aliens in the forest, but magic is definitely bullshit.
So you don't believe in the Philosopher's Stone?
Man, I don't even know what the hell that is.
So yeah, with Area 51, actually recently, the government, actually not too recently, but in July 14th, 2003, the government actually did acknowledge the existence of Area 51 as a place of intense government research. What that research is, we do not know.
Yeah, I mean, with the age of Google Maps, and I mean, Google Maps was probably the most hated thing as far as government agencies were concerned that like ever came out, because now you can literally just look anywhere on the globe and get a pretty damn detailed look at what's there.
That's where that's where the proof was, like, Area 51. What is this? I could clearly see some kind of facility right here.
I'm surprised they didn't do the whole blackout on Google Maps or Google Earth, because they do that on some locations. Some locations are blacked out on Google Earth.
Yeah, I like the description of Area 51 too. It's known as Groom Lake, and there was like a couple other ones.
Oh yeah, I have those. It's the Ranch, the Funny Farm, Dreamland, and Groom Lake.
Dreamland and the Funny Farm.
That's such a funny farm. That's such a 1950s like nickname for something. Yeah, go to the funny farm now. See?
Isn't that a term for an insane asylum? I think that's, or an institution.
Well,
institution?
that needless to say, that was probably a nickname given to the given by the skeptics, I would assume.
Yeah. You're coming from the Funny Farm. That's also a Chevy Chase comedy as well. Funny Farm.
So yeah, Area 51 definitely exists. Advanced research goes on there.
What it is, we do not know. We're not privy to know. If I make a guess, I think it's definitely either it still is experimental aircraft, or it was experimental aircraft. Maybe it's a base that's no longer being used because it's not blacked out. So maybe it's some kind of just nothing's there anymore, and well, they just don't want people on there because it still is technically government-owned property and government facility, but it's not active anymore. Possibly.
I would think that nowadays with our technology, if there is some kind of research going on, well, I know for a fact there still is.
It's underground.
Right.
Like
that's
what Independence Day. In Independence Day, it's just underground.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, I believe it would be underground. That way, you avoid any kind of potential for photographic, intrusive photographic proof. Like, you can Google Earth that all day, you'll never find it.
I've heard crazy stories from coast to coast with stuff like a whole side of a mountain opening up that people have seen. Just a whole side of a mountain just opening up and seeing all these like facilities and whatever weapons and shit like inside of a mountain. I believe it. I can totally see the government doing shady shit like that.
Have you ever seen that movie, The Manchurian Candidate?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the part where, dude, it always spooks the hell out of me where he's having flashbacks and they're in this like island.
The original one or the remake?
The remake.
Yeah.
Yeah, it spooks me so hardcore when it shows flashbacks and they're on this like clandestine island in this weird like facility, and like they're all like under this kind of hypnosis, and there's these crazy looking kind of like guards who are wearing these like black veils over their heads, and they're like making them do all these tests and like they're commanding one guy to kill the other and all that other kind of stuff, and he just does it without like on command. And man, that's just the amount of like I totally believe that kind of shit goes on is unbelievable. I believe in all that, but at the same time, I want nothing to do with it. That shit is so creepy. That is beyond creepy to me. Like,
it's like you just don't you believe maybe that this stuff actually happens and occurs, but you definitely do not want to be privy to the fact that it is absolutely 100% reality. Because when that happens, then you're either experiencing it for yourself, or you've come across it by accident, and then that's not good.
Or maybe you just have to live with the burden of knowing that this, certain, it's like the people who come back.
Or you're just a part of it, and then you get out of it, and then you have to live with the fact that all this secret clandestine shit goes on, and you just have to go around like life is normal, and nothing's wrong, and everything's just sunshine and rainbows. Everyone's going to live happily ever after with the knowledge that like the government's doing secret experiments on people, and they got all this other secret shit that nobody knows about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
that stuff is scarier than aliens in some way.
Yeah, no, it really is.
Or ghosts.
It really is. Now we're going down the rabbit hole now, and we have officially turned into Coast to Coast AM. I am Art Bell, and you're George Norrie at this point.
Yeah, but yeah, that show can be pretty scary, and that's where I got the whole story I was telling about the side of a mountain opening up, because just imagine seeing that.
Yeah, but I mean, that would be cool, to a certain extent. But like, as far as experimentations on people,
well, that would still be terrifying to me because it would be like just walking around, hiking or something at night, camping around, the whole side of a fucking mountain opens up. Like, what the fuck? All right, things aren't what they seem.
Yeah, that.
But with with Roswell and Area 51 connection, Area 51 is really close to Roswell, so I mean it would kind of make sense that they try to have a special facility maybe built for if there were alien bodies that were found, and if there was alien spacecraft and technology, it would kind of make sense that they want to build something as close to where they might be holding some of the stuff anyway. But then it's like, how long did it take them to build it? But I think Nevada's probably a good place anyway, because it's pretty secluded in whatever, desert, in the middle of a desert somewhere. So probably not everything is there. There's probably other stuff that's at other places. Like that other guy was saying when he was talking about Roswell, he thinks maybe one of the bodies might be in the FBI headquarters or something. There's probably multiple different places. I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, I think Roswell or Area 51 is probably an older kind of like, oh, that was so the 60s and 70s, man. Like the new place now is, there's probably like a newer, like more, fit for the modern technology kind of place.
Area 52.
Yeah, and I would, it would stand to reason that it is probably underground.
Yeah.
So I think that's all we have on Area 51. Don't fret. There are so many more UFO segments coming. I believe
segments, mysterious legends, crime stuff.
More bizarre murders, unexplained deaths. Good God, fraud. That's a topic that does not get talked about enough in Unsolved Mysteries, but is a great topic. Fraud. That's sociopathic in a completely different kind of way. But
yeah.
Yet again, I am Josh Cannon. You can look up my YouTube channel at youtube.com/dancingwithghosts and then the number 2. I do all kinds of game reviews, basically anything entertainment, games, music, movies, shows. I talk about it, do funny stuff. It's very entertaining if you like informative, educational kind of stuff, but also like to get a little chuckle here and there. I do top 10s. You can check out Mike's channel. Go ahead and plug your channel, Mike.
Check it out at OCB Communications on YouTube. There's only one OCB Communications, so you just go on YouTube and search OCB Communications. Probably if you even type in OCB Communications on Google, you'll probably find my channel. It's pretty easy to find. I do all kinds of stuff. I do movie reviews, gameplays, commentary tracks. I do a lot of stuff. It's kind of a catch-all kind of channel. So yeah, definitely check that out, and yeah, definitely check out Josh's channel. I think he does a lot of good work. So, I think he needs a little more subs. So definitely help him out.